Everybody, looks like I just went live. I wasn't quite ready to do that, but that's okay. I am coming to you from the town of Eilat in southern Israel, far southern Israel, down on the Red Sea. This place is hopping tonight, partially because it's a weekend and partially because there are still a lot of refugees living here, internally displaced people from other parts of Israel. About a couple of things down here, and I'm going to talk to you about those here in just a minute. But before I do that, I want to just show you around. I'm going to walk around and let you see a little bit about Eilat. I'm right down on the waterfront. That's my hotel over there. He's playing a piano. This is the Red Sea here. It just got dark. It's about 8 o'clock at night down here, and it's still really hot. Even though it looks beautiful, but it's super hot down here. It's probably 95, maybe 98 degrees outside right now. It feels like the sun is still out, even though it's not. Super hot out. Just gonna walk down here a little bit so you can see people are extremely concerned about the war and about the threat of rocket attacks from the Houthis and Iran. Everybody's just looks like we got a little bit of lag. I will have to get to some place that has a good connection and just stay there. Lots of hotels down here. Most of these hotels are completely booked. I had a bit of a hard time finding a hotel tonight. Ended up in a mid-range hotel. The hotels here are pretty expensive. The only hotels that were left were like hang on a minute. The only hotels that were left when I got here were like $700 to $800 a night. I was able to find a decent mid-range hotel that had a room left for $350 a night, and that was the best I could do. So I got that one. I'm kind of the king of the $9 a night hotels, and that's one thing that CBN likes a lot about my my traveling, is I don't have any problem staying in cheap hotels. But tonight there weren't any cheap hotels. $350 a night was the cheapest one I could find. So I'm gonna go back over here where there might be a little better signal. Question. Oh, hold on, I see a question going by there. Let's see. Yeah, I'm in Eilat. Have rocket attacks for now since they have fewer launchers? That's a very good question. And the answer, they haven't stopped, but they have certainly decreased, I would say, in the last few days. We haven't had 50, 60 a day. We've had maybe 5 or 6 a day.
Fuck yeah.
I just about punched that guy. He came running over to me. I didn't know what he was. Okay, so I'm gonna go find some place. Maybe down this. Oh, I know. I'll go over here, down this corridor. I did not check out the shelter hostel in Eilat. I typically am not staying in places that are that require you to sleep in a barracks with a bunch of other people. At the very least, I want to have my own room because I keep weird hours. I get pepper spray. I don't need pepper spray here. It's pretty safe. Okay, so let me set up the tripod here. I've got a little bit quieter place with some light, and we will talk about the news of the day. Man, it's hot out here. I mean, it looks really, really balmy, really nice, but it is like almost 100 degrees here, even at 8 o'clock at night after dark. It just radiates off everything. It might be nice to come here in, like January or something, but I don't know that I would want to make this a vacation spot any other time of the year. Now, our tour to Jordan and Israel coming up in October is going to be right across this way on the Jordanian side. We're going to stay over there and then cross over to Eilat in the, on, I don't know, like the 5th, I think, of October. Okay, so let's talk about what's going on in Israel. First of all, somebody wrote me. Yeah, you're going to hear that piano going. That's all right. Somebody wrote me, and there was a short YouTube that they saw that said that Israel had bombed an aid convoy and killed like 8 or 9 people, something like that. And they said, hey, this is really bad for it, this is super bad for Israel. And so, they're like, what's up with this? Well, let me tell you what's up with that. Let's talk about the rest of that story. The rest of the story is that the Israelis allowed that aid convoy to go into Gaza. After it got into Gaza, Hamas fighters came and took over the convoy and were going to steal it. And they were all riding in the very first vehicle with their weapons. And Israel just took a drone and took out that first vehicle and killed all the militants and then let the convoy go on its way. So nobody else in the convoy was hurt. The only people that were deleted were the Smurfs and, the militants. And that was it. So, of course, the world is going to set their hair on fire and the media is going to go, oh, Israel is bombing civilian, convoys meant to help people, and they're going to whine and cry about that. But of course, the rest of the story is important to understand, and that is that Israel was actually saving the convoy from the militants and not going after civilians. So that is what happened there. I saw a question go by here. All right, so I'm going to try to hit that. Isn't Boots on the Ground the name of Israeli reporter Yair Pinto's show? Maybe. I'm going to go meet with Yair on Sunday. I didn't mean to steal his trademark if that's the case, but if the IDF were to find and get back all the hostages, would that end the war or would they still fight? Well, that would get a lot closer to ending the war for sure. That would make it a lot easier to end the war because right now they have to not do some of the things that they need to do to finish the war because they are worried about killing the hostages. So that's part of the problem. Now, just to get to the main point of the video today. the boots on the ground American troops in Israel. Today I went to a place called, it's like Site 520. And it's in the middle of flippin' nowhere. It's one of the most remote places that you can find in Israel, in the middle of the Negev desert down in the south. And it's a radar installation that was supposed to be kind of a secret military base, but it's not a secret anymore. There's information about it out there on the internet. So nothing that I'm telling you tonight is anything that is not publicly available information, right? So because of that, I'm not telling bad people anything they don't need to know. Now, there are U.S. troops currently serving in this war. And this is something that most people have no idea about. And that's why I wanted to do a live about it. I went down there today. I visited the site. There are a couple hundred U.S. troops, Army soldiers, and civilian contractors who are operating a radar site in the Negev desert. This radar site is it's made up of a couple different components. It is surrounded by a massive, massive fence. I mean, they wouldn't let me film there or take any pictures or anything, or otherwise I'd show it to you. But the fence must be, it looks like it's 60 miles long if you were to run the whole fence line. I mean, I just drove for miles and miles and miles along the, one axis of that fence line surrounding the base. And it's got signs up that say special military area, no photographs, blah, 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 all that kind of thing. You can't even stop on the side of the road anywhere near that fence. So you have to keep driving. And Lord help you if you run out of gas or something out there, because they will be on you. There's cameras everywhere. It's very secure site. And man, you'd have to, I mean, it's a hike to get out there. It's a ways to get out there. So again, a couple hundred U.S. troops serving there. That site was built originally in 2008, and it was built as a portion of the U.S. missile defense system. Now, this is what's very interesting about this, because this site is a very sophisticated radar installation. And it's a defensive installation. It tracks the incoming missiles from the Houthis or Iran or anybody else. And it tracks all of them, I think, all over Israel. I think it's big enough to do that. They have two antennas up there, which are the tallest radar antennas in the world, they said. I read that somewhere. At the very least, they're the tallest in the Middle East, 1,300 feet high. And they are attached to an X-band radar system, a very high resolution radar system that normally would go along with the U.S. THAAD missile system, THAAD. I don't know if you've ever heard of those before, but the THAAD missile system is a really sophisticated counter missile system, like countering ICBMs and medium range missiles and things like that. We actually have sold some of those systems to, like, Saudi Arabia. We sold them $15 billion worth. That's about 6 of those systems. We put some of them over in South Korea a few years ago, and that's where I first learned about these systems. I went to South Korea to report on this because there were a ton of protests in South Korea that were being fomented by China. When we put those over there, China was making big noises about being very angry about the fact that we were putting these THAAD missile systems in South Korea, even though they are completely defensive in nature. And China was just really mad because it would give South Korea the ability to alert and to defend against any incoming missiles from China. And China just thought that was an absolute declaration of war practically, and they were going off. While I was there, they were sending agents provocateurs in to stir up unrest and make people angry and say, oh, those things are radioactive and they're gonna make everybody sick around where they're being deployed and everything like that. And I went over and did a story about it. Then thank you, Christopher. Appreciate that. They're hormone replacement shots. So the THAAD missile system, something that is really amazing about those things is that they can actually shoot down incoming rockets, missiles, ICBMs, whatever, in space. Now, THAAD stands for Terminal High Altitude Aerial Delivery System, something like that, or Aerial Defense System. And the terminal part of that is that they are designed to shoot down ICBMs and stuff on re-entry using a kinetic method. They don't do like the Iron Dome system, which actually blows up, uses like an explosive to knock out missiles that are coming in. It just actually runs right into them, just hits them. And each one of those systems, a THAAD missile system, costs like $1.2 billion or more nowadays. That was back in the 90s or something when they were, first being introduced. But they've been around for a while now, and they don't have any of those in Israel, although you would think that they might, because it's called like a TP2A radar system, which is that X-band radar system. And that system is actually able to be moved around. It goes on the back of trucks. That's one of the things that kind of sets it apart from other anti-missile defense radar systems, is that a lot of the other ones are sort of stationary. This one can be moved around. And it takes a good-sized crew to run it, but right now they've got it connected to these 1,300-foot tall towers. I saw those today, and they're certainly not going to be moving those around. So they have a base built out there in the middle of the desert. That radar system goes with the THAAD missile system, but it's also able to be connected to other anti-missile systems as well. And that's what they're doing with it here, because they don't have a THAAD missile system in Israel. As I was saying, they can shoot down ICBMs in space. Like they'll go like 25 miles into the atmosphere to shoot things down. I mean, those things are amazing, but they don't really need that. They do have that Arrow missile system will do that. It'll shoot down things outside of the Earth's atmosphere, and actually has done it in this war. And that was the first time in history it's ever been done, that they've actually shot down a missile in space. But that was the Arrow that did it, not the THAAD missile system. So the radar site they have set up out there is obviously connected to something else, because they don't have THAADs here. They've only sold them to a couple of other countries, and Israel is not one of those countries. And I just found it odd that we have up to about 200 Americans working at that secret, quote-unquote, base in the middle of the Negev. And I'm like, why? Why don't we just let the Israelis run it? That doesn't make sense. I mean, I saw where the United States, just before October 7th, allocated $44 million to upgrade that base out there in the middle of the Negev, with new chow hall, new barracks, new, quality of living stuff for the troops, which, believe me, man, if you got stationed out there, you would wonder what in the world you did wrong. That place is the most godforsaken place on planet. I mean, it's like being on the surface of Mars out there. There's not a tree, there's not a plant, there's not a hill practically. There's a couple of little rises, but I mean, and it's 900 degrees down there. And man, if they said, hey, we're sending you to site 512 for or 520, whatever it is, for a year, deployment, I'd be like, could you please just shoot me now, and just get it over with? I wouldn't say it's super dangerous for them because they're literally sitting on one of the most advanced anti-missile radar sites in the world. So, that would be kind of the biggest thing they would have to worry about was getting bombed by somebody. But there's just nothing. I mean, there's just nothing out there. Now, there is a town that's maybe a 25, 30-minute drive, maybe 20, 25-minute drive from that site. I'm not going to name it here, but you can look it up if you want to. But that town has, a McDonald's and a little shopping mall. I went today and got the screen protector on my phone replaced on my way out here because it had broken. And I actually, while I was at that little mall, I saw some U.S. troops coming in there. They wear civilian clothes, but like they stick out, like a milk bucket under a bull out there. I mean, you can 100%. I was like, there's some American soldiers. And I didn't even hear them talking until, I was leaving, but they were definitely American soldiers coming out there. So it must be that those guys, when they get a little time off, they can drive to this town and, can go shopping or whatever. It's not a big town. There's some pretty girls there. I mean, that would have been what our guys did if we got sent out to a place like that. We'd go trolling for some females, but I don't know how much of that they're allowed either. And I just, as an aside, let me just say this. Back in the day, even when I was in, it used to be so much better to be in the U.S. military than it is today. All the social justice garbage, notwithstanding that they have to deal with today, that's even worse. The fact that your commander might be a transvestite or something, that's even worse. But even all that, leaving all that stuff aside, when we deployed to places around the world, you got to actually experience those places. You got to, when you got off work or you had some time, got a weekend pass or something, you could go to town, you could have a few beers, you could, pick up some girls, do whatever. You just, they would give us a safety briefing and they would say, if you drink, don't drive. If you drive, don't drink. If you swim with a buddy. If you siphon, don't swallow. Don't add to the population and don't just subtract from the population, and you should be good. That was our safety briefing. But, they would just let us go. And so, like, I got to deploy to Panama a couple times. I got to deploy to Scotland. I got to go to a lot of cool places around the world as a soldier. And ever since the War on Terror began, they really clamped down, especially in the Middle East, where those guys basically it's really difficult for them to even leave their bases. And if they leave their bases, they have very tight restrictions on what they can do. They can't drink. They can't, stay out too late. They can't stay over, have to get a pass and tell their commander exactly where they're going to be, how long they're going to be there, what they're going to be doing, who they're going to be with, blah, 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 all this stuff. They can't wear their uniform off base, which might make it slightly more difficult to pick up girls and things like that. So and then if you back up another 30, 40 years, 50 years, and look at like the Vietnam era, or even back to the Korean War or World War II, man, those guys, when they were deployed, they were living it up. They got off work at night and man, they'd be out partying, they'd do whatever they want to do. And man, half the time they'd come back in stone-faced, drunk, and they'd just have to deal with it. As long as you did your job and did it okay, you wouldn't get in a whole lot of trouble. Man, I heard stories about guys that bring girls back and they'd take them up in their airplanes and take them flying around, or take them up in their helicopters. And I mean, just crazy stuff. My grandfather, when he was in the Army Air Corps, man, the fighter pilots, they used to take their fighter plane home to the farm for the weekend when they were in the States for training, and take the family up for rides and do crazy stuff like that. now the kinds of things that they did back then, they had a level of freedom that they couldn't even imagine today. Couldn't even imagine today. So they have really done everything they can to take all the fun out of being in the military, as far as, being able to see the world and go amazing places and stuff. Now these guys, it apparently looks like they were allowed to actually leave the base, but I would be surprised if they were allowed to like go out drinking or anything like that. And I know during the Iraq-Afghanistan wars, man, they were not allowed off the base. They were not allowed anywhere because an insurgency is kind of a different thing. It was somewhat an insurgency in Vietnam, but they still would let them have a lot more freedom than they have today. And that's, to me, it's just kind of sad. We've gotten so risk averse in the U.S. military and so mistrustful of our own soldiers that, for example, a U.S. soldier, an Army Ranger in the United States military, active duty, is not allowed to carry a firearm in his car and bring it on post. He's not allowed to have a personal firearm in his room if he's living on post or at the barracks. It's just ridiculous stuff like that. Like, what? Wait a minute. You're giving this guy fully automatic weapons on a daily basis at work, but when he gets off work, he's not allowed to carry his weapon. I'm not talking about a rifle. I'm just talking, he can't carry a 9mm, on base or anything like that. It's just things like that kind of make my blood boil. And again, it's even worse when you add in all the social justice garbage that they get faced with today. My boy just got out of the U.S. military, and he was like, man, Dad, the training that we do, we spend more time learning how to properly avoid misgendering somebody or call them by their wrong pronouns than we do learning how to fix the helicopters or keep them running or whatever. I mean, it's just like there's so much stupid social justice garbage we have to deal with nowadays in the military. So if you put me in that kind of military, I wouldn't last very long. And if you sent me to a place like the Negev Desert, well, that's probably where I would end up, because they'd be mad at me. And I'd get sent out there probably. But okay, so let's talk more about U.S. troops in Israel. So we got a couple hundred troops and a legit U.S. military base in the Negev Desert in southern Israel. The United States doesn't want you to know about it. It's cost more than $1 billion to set up. They put $40 million into renovations last year, right before October 7th. And each one of those troops that's there, I would say it would not surprise me if they cost literally $1 million each per year to keep out there. Just knowing how the U.S. military works. I did a story about this one time in Kosovo. There's a base in Kosovo, and Camp Bondsteel, and they had just like 1,000 U.S. troops there, and they were spending $1 billion a year keeping that base open. And they said they were spending about $1 million per U.S. troop to keep them out there in the field. And I don't know what they're spending in total on the base out here, but it's just interesting to me that there are no Israelis on that base. The United States, I guess this is, okay, a little mind-boggling to me. We sold 6 of these systems to the Saudis, but we don't trust the Israelis to run it. And so we have to have our soldiers running that radar installation. And I guess because of some of the stuff that they're collecting, it's being fed into a global missile defense system in the U.S. And so they figured they need our guys running it. They don't want to, have some foreign, because you never know. I mean, that might be the smartest thing to do. If, for example, just look at the example of the Incirlik Air Base in Turkey. We have a large air base there that we built when Turkey was our friend. Turkey is no longer our friend. And now it would be really great if we could just close that down and move it somewhere else. But we have a bunch of nuclear missiles residing there in Turkey. And you can't just put those things in a suitcase. And so if now that Turkey is not our friend, they have some leverage over us because they could shut off the electricity, for example, to that base in Turkey. Or they could, God forbid, send their army in and confiscate all the nuclear materials and stuff. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that would certainly spark a wider war, but they kind of have us, by the, what, if you know what I mean. And so, even though Israel is one of our staunchest allies in this region, if we have very specific, high-tech stuff that we don't want falling into the wrong hands, or we don't want to take the chance that someday down the road Israel and the United States get sideways with each other and they come in and just take it or shut it down or something, then we would want to have our troops here doing it. Now, the good thing for the Israelis is that we can pass that information that we're gathering from these 1,300 foot tall radar antennas. We can pass that along to the Israelis. And without a doubt, during the attack that happened on April 13th from Iran, that's an issue. That's an issue for sure. Now, audio just said, okay, folks, I gotta go. Bye-bye. Is the audio back? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Back now. Okay, good. Sorry, Newsmax is trying to call me. I don't think they're supposed to be calling me, but they're trying to call me. So you can hear me. Okay, good. All right, I was about to cut off. So what other U.S. troops are there in Israel? Well, obviously we have some at the embassy. There are always U.S. Marines that guard the embassy, and that's the same in any country where we have an embassy. So that's not a surprise. We also have some special operations troops that have been here since the beginning, and they are at different places on the ground, and they are here to assist any way they can with rescuing any American hostages that happen to be found. So now these are the kind of troops that are on the ground here that if they got information about an American hostage and knew where he was, and they mounted a mission to go in and rescue that American hostage, and they successfully rescued him, you would never know that it was our guys that did it. It would get, they would give all the credit to the IDF, to the, special forces or the Shin Bet or something like that, and they would not take credit for it. So you're not going to hear any news about those U.S. troops that are there, that are here in Israel, but I can promise you they are. I have spoken with them, I've seen them, and it's a matter of public record. That's not, they might try to say it's classified, but you can do a Google search and find out a little bit about them, so it's not really classified. So in addition to that, of course, we have all of the naval ships that are now around Israel. There's some right here in the Red Sea, further south from us, and there are some that are off in the Caribbean. I'm sorry, the Caribbean, the Mediterranean, and that represents literally thousands of U.S. sailors and Marines. So, if you were to add up all of the U.S. forces who are in support of the war between Israel and Iran, I'm going to just say it, because it's not a war between Israel and Hamas as much as it's a war between Israel and Iran and all their proxies. But if you'd add up all the U.S. forces that are arrayed around and in Israel, maybe count the forces that are also in Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Iraq, whatever, because, you know, all of that, you're probably looking at north of 15,000 troops, probably maybe closer to 20, 25,000, just depending on how you count them. Now, are any of those involved in direct combat operations? Well, the Biden administration says no, says they will not be involved in direct combat operations like in Gaza or something. But we wouldn't have those particular special forces guys here, or special operations guys here, if they weren't here in order to participate when needed, if needed, in combat operations. Now, they may not have had to yet. I just saw UAPs. Any reports of UAPs? Unmanned aerial platforms come out of Israel? No, Israel has lots of drones in the sky, and they're both attack drones and surveillance drones, and they're being used in the north and in the south and in Gaza and everywhere else. But that's not why these guys are here. These guys are here for targeting and acquisition assistance of incoming missiles and things like that. So if they are involved in a defensive capacity,